Chapter 261, Wolverine Wants Redemption. Mr. Lion, B-15 said at last, breaking her silence. The TVA executive walked up to him. Thank you for dealing with Cassandra, that Omega-level mutant. Because of her power, we had no choice before but to make compromises, she continued. We agreed not to interfere with each other. But her building up power in the Voidland and interfering with Elios's actions was a hidden danger. It could one day threaten the operation of the multiverse. Thanks to you, she's finally dead, and the Voidland can return to normal. Mr. Lion waved a hand. She just happened to run into my gun, that's all. And just call me Mr. Lion. After all, there are two Starks here. All right, Mr. Lion, B-15 said with a smile. I don't know how to thank you. How about this? When we get back, we'll throw a celebration banquet. A banquet? Mr. Lion spread his hands. You're not angling to recruit me back onto the Anchor People team, are you? Don't even think about it. I already said no. If you want to thank me, why don't you give me a few of those Infinity Stones from your bureau? He said. I don't need many. 100 or 80 should be enough. 100 or 80? B-15 blinked, then surprisingly agreed. Of course, no problem. Her expression shifted to puzzlement. But what would you do with those worthless stones? To be honest, they're not even good as paperweights. They're useless in the TVA, but what if I take them back to my universe? Mr. Lion said. B-15 sighed. You might not understand. The Infinity Stones in the TVA mostly came from timelines that were pruned long ago. They were forged from the essence of singularities at the Big Bang, places that once contained infinite energy. But it was the universes that sprang from those singularities that held the true infinite energy, not the stones themselves. The stones can be huge focal points for that energy, but when a universe has already perished, the stones forged from its singularities lose much of their power. If you take them back to your universe, they'll still work, but they'll be far weaker than your universe's own Infinity Stones. If you want to use them to get stronger or study universal rules, the effect will be minimal. I thought so, Lion muttered. It doesn't matter if they're not that useful. Maybe when we return to the TVA, you can take me to see them and let me pick two to take away. Of course. No problem. Let's return now. B-15 reached for her time tablet, but a sudden shriek cut her off. Everyone turned. Logan was on top of Deadpool, driving his claws into him over and over. Each strike hit an artery. Blood sprayed. The scene turned briefly gruesome. Hiss! That looks painful, Gwen murmured. Why are they fighting so fiercely? Is it because Deadpool brought Wolverine here? I'm afraid it's more than that, B-15 said softly. This Wolverine is one of the most tragic people in the multiverse. She told them, briefly and without flourish, the story of Logan's downfall. How the X-Men took him in, how he once refused full membership, how on one return to Xavier's school he found Professor X, Jean, Storm, everyone dead. How grief and rage drove him mad, how his revenge killed villains and heroes and innocents alike, how he became a notorious villain in his own world. Now, B-15 said, by hurting and cursing Deadpool, he's really venting at himself. So detailed, Gwen said in awe. Do all your TVA employees know so much about people from other worlds? B-15 smiled. It's not just you, it's us. You and the other Peters are TVA personnel now. From here on, you'll learn the stories across the multiverse. That sounds amazing. I'll come to the TVA every day, Gwen beamed. No, that's not cool at all, Deadpool grumbled from beneath Wolverine, his voice muffled but still teasing. Wolverine froze at that, his claws still embedded in Deadpool's chest, his face collapsing into something hollow and exhausted. For a moment, his whole slashed expression looked like a ruined landscape. Oh my God, you never told me about your past, Deadpool continued in the same overly chatty tone. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been so angry. Seriously, you're way more miserable than me. That produced a reaction. Logan's jaw tightened. With a quick twist of his claws, he made Deadpool scream. Shut up, idiot! Ow, ow! Stop! Wait! Deadpool tried to scramble for an out. He spotted B-15 and seized on an idea. Hey, the TVA can travel through time, and there's a TVA agent right here. Why don't you apply to her to fix the past? Fix the past. Logan's fingers went slack around Deadpool for a beat. He looked at B-15 with a hope so raw it was almost childlike. I'm afraid not, B-15 said gently. Changing the past only creates a new timeline. Your world wouldn't be changed at all, Logan. Another timeline? Logan pushed himself up off Deadpool and took her in. Another timeline where no one died. That's right, B-15 said, but there would also be another you on that timeline. Then let me go to that timeline, Logan said. He stepped toward her. Let me make up for everything. I'll do anything. This probably doesn't follow procedure, B-15 began to refuse. No, no, no. Deadpool popped in from the ground, bleeding and ridiculous, pointing at Mr. Lion. Madam, haven't you noticed how valuable Logan would be as an employee? Help him fix his regrets, and he'll work tirelessly at the TVA. Think about how good that would be. Deadpool hopped over to Mr. Lion, threw an arm around him like a sloppy friend, and tried to lift him in a dramatic flourish. Mr. Lion responded with a single decisive punch that flattened Deadpool's head comically against the pavement. But the plea had been heard. B-15 hesitated, glancing between Mr. Lion and Logan. Her expression softened. Let's talk about it when we get back to the TVA, she said at last. It wasn't a promise, but it was the closest thing to one she would give. Logan let out a breath that could have been a laugh or a sob. Deadpool, blood running from the flat of his skull, managed a thumbs up from the ground. Mr. Lion stepped aside and looked off into the distance. A small, mangy dog in a Deadpool costume came charging toward them, tongue lolling, fur patchy, ridiculous in the best way. Behind it, a cloud of dust rose, and the rumble of engines grew. A motorcycle gang, made entirely of Deadpool variants, thundered at full tilt, kicking up the desert as they closed in. Chapter 262, Chapter They Are Here Again. The motorcycle group thundered toward them. Engines roared and the ground vibrated, getting closer and louder. It was like a herd of mammoths stampeding toward their blind dates, and every last one of them looked ravenous. The spider sense of the three Peters went off all at once, as if someone had shoved an alarm clock into their heads. They're here again! They're here again! Holland's spider yelped like a startled cat. Who's here again? Tony asked, momentarily stunned. Deadpools. I smell other Deadpools. Lots of Deadpools, Wolverine said, staring toward the dusty horizon. Deadpool's eyes widened. When did Logan become a Deadpool sniffer? Come on, what does a Deadpool even smell like? Guys, you've got it all wrong, Deadpool protested. I am as fresh as a freshly bathed avocado. No weird smells here. He drew his swords and stepped forward. This time, let me block all the perverts and prove that Deadpool is the absolute best. Body and soul. Those Deadpools are perverts. Aren't you a Deadpool too? Garfield Spider said, unconvinced. Deadpool twirled his sword. Then I'll just tell them Peter belongs only to me. He stood in the dust, waving his swords like a hero ready to meet death. The Peters blinked, momentarily unsettled, until a panting, bald little dog raced ahead of the main Deadpool force. All the young spiders recognized it instantly. Huh, didn't Deadpool once turn into a dog? That looks like that dog, Garfield Spider muttered, voicing what everyone was thinking. Deadpool heard it and froze. The alloy katana in his hand clanged to the ground as if it had been dropped on purpose. He dropped to his knees, staring at the dog with a dazed expression. Oh my God, look at this beautiful little guy. It's practically another me. Any heroic pose evaporated. Deadpool was already defeated by the enemy's single tactic. Cute animal. The would-be death-defying champion collapsed before the dog's ploy. The three Peters all smacked their foreheads at once. I knew this guy was unreliable. Isn't he adorable? Deadpool cooed, waving at the dog. Come here, little guy, come. 3 meters out, the Deadpool dog leapt. Deadpool lunged to meet it, arms open. They were both rushing each other. For a moment, the soundtrack should have swelled with something romantic. Instead, the dog vaulted straight into Garfield Spider's arms and immediately began enthusiastically licking his face. No, its tongue, hey, stop it! Garfield sputtered, covered in slobber at first contact. It smells exactly like Deadpool. Disgusted, Garfield handed the dog off to Holland Spider, who promptly got licked all over. No, 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 Holland tossed it to Toby Spider next. Don't! Mary Jane will kill me tonight. Toby, panicking, hurled the dog back to Deadpool. Deadpool took the dog like a treasure. Look at this little guy. Same hobby, same vibe. Perfect match. The dog licked his cheek, and Deadpool crowed, Yes! Its tongue still has Peter's scent on it. Isn't this perfect? As the dog worked his face, Deadpool peeled off his mask, stuck out his own tongue, and enthusiastically licked the dog back. God, this little guy is so energetic. Everyone present gaped. Their opinion of Deadpool reached new, previously unimagined depths. The Peters backpedaled as fast as they could, frantically wiping their faces. Ugh! Calm Toby, suave Garfield, and flustered Holland all looked ready to murder their past selves who'd agreed to tag along with Deadpool to find Wolverine. Gwen patted her chest, lingering in horror, and grateful she wasn't a Peter. Deadpool? Are all Deadpools like this? Tony asked, incredulous. Holland Spider hauled on him. Mr. Stark, a minute ago I would have said they were all the same, but now I think they can only get worse. Now I understand why that werewolf said the Avengers didn't want Deadpool, Tony muttered. My Avengers wouldn't want this kind of guy either. Tony patted Holland Spider on the back with a blank expression, then produced several suits of armor and floated them into the air. Don't worry, kid. No matter how many Deadpools show up, I'll keep them out. The Deadpool Corps was still a few hundred meters away, but their noisy chanting was already drowning out the engines. Peter! My Peter, I'm here! Peter-san! Ah! A pack of lunatics arrived, singing, dancing, thrashing their limbs like Cthulhu worshippers chasing Loki. Tony barked, Jarvis, stop them! They all heal, don't hold back. Yes, sir. Several Mark 12 units lined up, palms raised. Jarvis's voice came over the armor speakers, calm and clinical. Greetings, Deadpools. Please pursue Mr. Parker rationally. Please stop now. You may only line up to hug Mr. Parker after obtaining his consent. No, I don't want a hug. Jarvis, drive them all away. Holland Spider protested, clutching his head. Jarvis's polite tone didn't waver. Apologies, Mr. Deadpools. Mr. Parker refuses to hug you. Please leave the area. That's Iron Man's armor talking. Impossible. Peter can't refuse us, one Deadpool shouted. Peter, you're being controlled, aren't you? Is Iron Man making you say this? That middle-aged man is too controlling. Rescue Peter. Capture Iron Man alive. Rescue Peter. The Deadpools slammed the throttles, tires squealed, dust shot up, and they charged straight at the Iron Man defense line. Warning, continued proximity will result in unlimited counterattack, Jarvis announced. Warning in 3, 2, 1. Apologies, Mr. Deadpools. The Mark 12s fired. Repulsors glowed and energy beams crisscrossed into the charging crowd. Motorcycles exploded in a shower of metal and flame. Deadpool limbs and armor pieces went flying in the blasts. After a few sweeping volleys, the Mark 12 units held their fire, hanging in the air and waiting for the smoke and debris to clear. Chapter 263, Spider-Man. At the same time, Jarvis issued another warning. Deadpools, sirs and madams, please cease your improper behavior, or the attacks will not stop. Exactly. Next time it won't stop. Garfield Spider-Man crowed, grinning. Well done, Mr. AI. Mr. Parker, I am not an AI, but an intelligent life form, Jarvis corrected, turning the armor's head. You can call me Jarvis. He raised his hand again and aimed toward the Deadpool Corps. In the slowly clearing smoke and dust, blurred shapes began to stir. Some crawled up on broken legs, others on shattered arms, but they all staggered forward. Please stop, everyone, or I will attack again, Jarvis warned. His plea had no effect. More ragged figures pushed themselves out of the haze, uneven and determined. Tony stared, baffled. They're relentless. They don't die. Do they not feel pain? Deadpool, standing nearby and still comparing tongue strength with Deadpool dog, answered around a mouthful. I'm actually afraid of pain, but for Peter, I can be fearless. God, save your breath, Tony muttered. The moment you open your mouth, I feel like vomiting a week's worth of meals. Deadpool didn't stop. You're the man with the most say in the Avengers, you know. 6 years ago, I even went to your... He went on. Tony tuned him out, eyes fixed on the floating armor. Jarvis, don't waste time. Incapacitate those Deadpools, now. Yes, sir. The palm cannons on several Iron Man suits began to charge. Just as the energy lasers were about to fire, the Deadpools fully emerged from the dust. The figures resolved into something almost pitiful. Almost no one was intact. The least injured was a female Deadpool, her right hand blackened from the blast. If Jarvis had fired, they would have been reduced to charred, shredded corpses. And then Tony saw the reason the armor's guns dimmed. At the front of the horde were two particular Deadpools, a baby Deadpool and an unmasked, long-haired Deadpool who looked disturbingly sunlit and handsome despite a charred leg that showed no sign of healing. Both were propped up by other Deadpools, held like shields. The long-haired one smiled brightly, lifting a hand in greeting. Hi, I'm Deadpool, but everyone calls me Good Guy Deadpool. I'm here to find Peter, and I need to find my puppy. Have you seen her? Another baby Deadpool flashed a middle finger and squealed. The kid Deadpool holding him translated, "Don't tell me you're gonna hurt a baby, Iron Man." Jarvis looked back at Tony. Tony could only stare, then finally said, "Is this even morality? They're using it against us." "Sir, I suggest not touching the baby, even though he can self-heal," Jarvis advised. Also, the Deadpool being used as a hostage, analysis indicates he does not possess regenerative abilities. It's not recommended to attack. Tony rolled his eyes. First time I've seen someone use his own people as human shields. Charming. He changed tactics almost instantly. Jarvis, no energy weapons. Charge in with the armors. Beat those Deadpools hard. He released dozens more suits and suited up himself, launching into the air. The Armor Legion plunged into the howling Deadpool swarm. Blades flashed, fists met flesh, and battle cries filled the sky. The little spiders clapped and cheered from the sidelines. Leon floated up, his biofield open, quietly recording. B-15 breathed a secret sigh of relief that she hadn't let Deadpool into the TVA, though she knew Sylvie and the others had been optimistic about the original Deadpool, which made things complicated. The armored assault and the endlessly regenerating Deadpool Corps clashed ferociously, but neither side's real goal was annihilation. The Deadpools weren't trying to kill, they were trying to hug Peter. Their single-mindedness made them reckless in combat. As they fought their way through the armors, the Deadpools became fewer, because they kept dropping everything to swarm any Peter they could find. Tony looked down and realized with a cold jolt that the three Peters who had been cheering him on were now completely surrounded by Deadpools, screaming, cheering, chanting their name. The Peters' faces were pawed and pulled by a dozen maniacs. One especially perverted Deadpool was even trying to jam his finger into Holland Spider's mouth. Wanda and Gwen stood frozen, stunned into inaction. None of them had ever seen anything so obscene and unsettling. Meanwhile, the main Deadpool, who had promised to restrain the others, had defected as soon as the situation turned ugly. He was now cheering alongside the rest, circling the Peters. "Help! Help, Mr. Stark!" Holland Spider twisted, knees knocking, trying to keep the female Deadpool's hand away. Tony felt a surge of rage he hadn't expected, an ugly, almost paternal protectiveness. He aimed his armor toward the commotion to save Holland, and several Deadpools tried to pull him down. He shrugged them off, punching them aside one by one. Just as he closed in, another Deadpool stepped in front of him. Ronin Deadpool held baby Deadpool in his left hand, a sword pressed to the baby's neck in the other. "Sorry, Stark-san," Ronin Deadpool drawled. "Don't come any closer or this child gets beheaded." Tony's eyes bulged. "Are you f***ing kidding me?" He struggled, meter by meter. He couldn't bring himself to risk the baby. Then he noticed Leon filming the whole debacle from above and barked, "Leon, stop spectating. Get down here and help." Up in the sky, Leon, who had been filming happily, shut his equipment with a satisfied snap. "What do you mean watching the show? This is an opportunity to show off your skills," he retorted. "Turns out I gave you an opportunity and you didn't take it." Leon's figure wavered like a mirage and then appeared beside Tony. He casually opened a portal a dozen kilometers away. Before Ronin Deadpool could react, Leon shoved both Ronin Deadpool and Baby Deadpool, sword, kid, and all, through the opening and sent them tumbling into the distant void. Leon stared at the other Deadpools, and his speed snapped up. The world around him slowed, motes of dust hung in the air, and every depraved grin behind those masks was crystal clear. He strolled through them, calm as if on a sidewalk, and one by one tossed the frozen, leering Deadpools into the portal. The female Deadpool's fingers had already pried open Holland Spider's mouth. Holland's despair was so theatrical it looked like a scene out of Anna Karenina. Leon laughed, then tossed the woman into the portal too. Each Deadpool had a different, grotesque way of behaving, poses and perversions as varied as the corpses in a curiosity cabinet, none of them remotely sane. On the other side of the portal, they piled up like a mountain of trash, and for a moment there was a strange sort of harmony in the heap, as if Deadpools belonged stacked and burned away. Finally, Leon closed the portal casually, as cutting off those hundreds of awful entanglements for the three Peters. When he slowed back to normal, The three spider people, Holland, Garfield, and Toby, were still screaming for help, thrashing in the air like drowning men. They hit the ground, rolled, clutched themselves, and kept shouting. Only then did it register. The nightmare was over. They blinked, bewildered and cautious, looked around, and asked weakly where the Deadpools had gone. Leon told them he had sent the Deadpool core away. The three collapsed into the grass in a collective, exhausted spread eagle, staring at the sky, still shaking. "How can the multiverse be like this?" Holland said. "I never want to leave my own universe again," Garfield added. "But we've already joined the Time Variance Authority," Toby reminded them. They fell quiet, glancing up at B-15. B-15 shook his head. "Gentlemen, once you're in, you can't quit," he said. "What happened just now was an accident. There aren't that many Deadpools in the multiverse." The three Peters keened again and collapsed back onto the ground. At that moment, another argument cut through the chaos. "Such a cute little fellow should have the right to choose," Deadpool was saying, oddly earnest. "She should pick her own master." "But this little darling is mine," Good Person Dog said, smiling like a sunrise. "I'm sorry, but she's a girl. Please don't call her it." While the Deadpool core had been descending on the Peters, the original Deadpool had been trying to pocket a little dog, Deadpool Dog, until Good Person Dog intervened to reclaim her. Leon had deliberately left Good Person Dog out of the portal. The two of them had been bickering over the dog for several minutes. Deadpool insisting the dog was his, Good Person Dog insisting she wasn't. Despite Good Person Dog's gentleness, his sense of boundaries was ironclad. He would not give the dog up. Deadpool, for once, wasn't willing to be denied. This dog looked exactly like him in his dog form, entity-level compatibility as far as Deadpool was concerned. He scoffed at Good Person Dog's refusal. "Please, look at her. Her looks, her vibe. She's practically attached to me. Let her choose." Deadpool held the little dog up. Good Person Dog smiled and shook his head. "Sorry, she's my dog." "Fuck," Deadpool spat. He considered whether to kill Good Person Dog on the spot. Then his eyes landed on Leon, bright with a new plan. "Wait," he crooned to the dog. "Mary Poppins, watch this." He whispered, "I'm going to deal with this fake smiling waiter." He set the dog down and trotted to Leon. "Leon, Leon," he called, uncharacteristically by name. "Quick, do that Hogwarts trick that turned me into a dog. Vera Verto, like Moody turning Malfoy into a ferret." Leon barked a laugh. "You want to be turned back into a dog? Please, this is the most important thing I've ever asked. All right? Vera Verto." Deadpool shrank and shifted, his human limbs compressing into a small, mangy dog, an ugly little creature that seemed carved from the same mold as Deadpool Dog. Dog Deadpool was elated. He wagged and rushed to Deadpool Dog's side. Deadpool Dog licked him, surprised, and the two of them bumped heads, bolted off, ran a circle together, swapped positions, and after a few laps it was impossible to tell which was Dog Deadpool and which was Deadpool Dog. Leon watched, and the plan dawned on him. Deadpool's idea was simple and viciously logical. When two indistinguishable dogs walk side by side, how can anyone say which one belongs to whom? The dogs stopped. One of them sauntered up to Good Person Dog, looked him in the face, barked a few times, then gave a brazen wiggle of its rear. The message was obvious. "Can you tell which of us is your dog now? If you can't, she's mine." Good Person Dog froze. His smile slipped. For a beat, he seemed to be reevaluating his entire life. Then, after a moment's blankness, he walked up to Leon with an awkward grin. "Can you turn me into a puppy too?" He intended to fight Deadpool on Deadpool's own terms. Leon, amused, raised a hand and said, "Vera Verto." Good Person Dog spun and became a puppy as well, only his transformation was different. He was all soft, golden fur, immaculate and shining, with big dark eyes and a faint, knowing smile. In the canine world, he was a Ryan Reynolds, ridiculously handsome. He dashed eagerly toward the two little mangy dogs, desperate to prove he belonged. The contrast was immediate. Where the Deadpool dogs were ugly and chaotic, Good Person Dog glowed with clean, proud beauty. They did not look like they came from the same world at all. Good Person Dog lunged to corral Deadpool Dog, but Deadpool Dog slipped away, darting and dodging, and even slipping behind the other little dog for cover. For a moment, the scene was absurd. Three puppies circling, one radiant golden, two ragged twins, each staking a claim in the strangest custody battle the multiverse had seen. Chapter 265. Chapter story temporarily ended. Good Person Dog chased after them a few times, then tilted his head and stopped, clearly puzzled. Leon casually conjured a mirror with magic and held it up. Good Person Dog saw a beautiful puppy in the reflection, then turned to look at the two other, uglier dogs and froze. It turned out Deadpool Dog really was a better match for the other Deadpool. For a moment, it felt like something fragile had cracked in the air. The smile on Good Person Dog's face went from genuine to strained and fake. Woof woof! Good Person Dog took a few tentative steps toward Deadpool Dog, as if hoping to win back this little beauty one last time. But Deadpool Dog turned his head away and went back to licking the original Deadpool. The original Deadpool waved a paw at Good Person Dog, as if to say, "We're not in the same circle. Don't force it." Defeated, Good Person Dog forced a smile and slunk away. His silhouette faded into the wilderness. Meanwhile, the heartless Deadpool and the other Deadpool dog continued their mutual licking. "He looks like a dog," Leon murmured. "What nonsense are you talking? He is a dog now, and you're the one who turned him into one," Tony said, having drifted over to Leon's side. He was still supporting Holland Spider with one arm. Holland Spider gave Leon a thumbs up. "Thanks, Leon. If you hadn't sent the Deadpool core away, I think today would have been the end of Spider-Man." Garfield Spider strolled over. "Nice work. Would have been even better if you'd turned those Deadpools into dogs sooner." "If they'd turned into dogs, wouldn't they all come lick you guys?" Leon asked. Garfield Spider shivered. "Then, nope, forget it. Being licked by that many Deadpools? I'd rather die." B-15 approached and glanced at the two gleefully bald dog Deadpools. "Gentlemen, perhaps we should return to the Time Variance Authority." She tapped the time pad and opened a temporal gate. The two little Deadpool dogs were the first to hop through. Toby Spider's fingers trembled. Ma'am, when the Deadpool core showed up earlier, couldn't you have just taken us away like this?" B-15 stepped into the gate beside them. "Those are lunatics. If we don't indulge them a bit, who knows what trouble they'll cause. Sorry, we could only let you suffer for a while." Toby Spider went instantly pale, as if his insides were cracking. B-15 glanced back. "This time, everyone's injuries were work-related. The Time Variance Authority will compensate you for all emotional damages." Peter Parker blinked, incredulous. "Compensation?" B-15 thought for a moment, then, apparently guessing Peter's priorities, added, "How about some after-tax funds usable in your respective worlds, 3 times your annual income?" "Oh my God, are you serious?" Toby asked. "Of course, Mr. Parker," Peter said. "Madam, I think the Time Variance Authority is the best agency I've ever encountered," someone else chimed. Everyone returned to the Time Variance Authority. B-15 gave them a proper tour this time, and Tony's sense of justice lit up as he wandered the halls. B-15, however, had no interest in recruiting him. When the tour ended, they said their goodbyes. Thanks to Leon's earlier modifications to the time pad, the Time Variance Authority successfully locked onto several individual worlds within the Spider-Verse. The little spiders who had already joined received their own time pads. From then on, they could freely travel between parallel worlds, though they would first undergo a period of training at the TVA. After farewells, everyone opened their respective world's temporal gate and left with a swirl of thoughts. Holland Spider returned to his small apartment, thought about his encounter with the other Tony, and leaned against the wall alone, staring at the ceiling before breaking into a smile. Garfield Spider went back to his workshop, certain he'd have nightmares about the Deadpool core for a long time. Toby Spider came home and was immediately asked by Mary Jane why he smelled strange. Then he produced the 3 years' income the TVA had granted, and the two hugged each other happily. Gwen returned to her world too. She had no friends there who truly knew her. She sat on the edge of her bed, nudged her drum kit with her foot, and already missed everyone who'd parted ways. Penny Parker, Spider-Ham, the Peters, Wanda, and probably that Superman mage Leon. "Wanda invited me to her place," she muttered, looking at the time pad in her hand. At first, Wanda and Gwen had been reluctant to reach out, but after the Deadpool core arrived, the two girls had witnessed too many outrageous scenes and bonded over their shared disgust and delight. Meanwhile, Leon and his companions returned to the 1999-99S universe. Little Peter and Aunt Mai were already home. The day's close call had surely put Aunt May on edge for a year. Little Peter, however, was ecstatic. Having met so many versions of Spider-Man, he could hardly wait to be bitten by a spider. Leon later heard that, to make it happen sooner, little Peter had even started feeding spider pets. Natasha and Shirley had been waiting in the living room. Leon told them about his trip through the parallel universe, and the three of them gaped in wonder. Tony, though, was not pleased. "What's with that Time Destruction Bureau nonsense?" he complained. "They'd rather keep those two bald dog things and werewolf Lupin than invite me to join them. Are they planning something shady and afraid I'll find out?" Leon spread his hands. "Come on, B-15 only showed us 2 floors, and when we turned around, the employees had already found over 70 listening devices." Tony's cheek twitched. Anyone who didn't know would think we'd gone there to sell listening devices, couldn't sell them, and started clearing them out on the spot. I was worried spies had infiltrated them, like S.H.I.E.L.D., so I enthusiastically helped investigate, Tony added defensively. "I remember you told them you were just curious at the time," Leon said as he took a coffee Natasha handed him. "You were messing around in their territory. It's lucky you didn't get kicked out. And besides," Leon continued, "they left a Jarvis subunit behind to assist with oversight. That makes me feel better." Jarvis's voice came from a device. "Yes, sir. The Time Variance Authority will add my subunit to their supervision system. Once we build a cross-temporal communication device, I'll be able to receive their information in real time." "That sounds pretty good," Tony said. "So when are we building the cross-temporal communication device?" "The time pad the Time Variance Authority gave young Master Leon can do that," Jarvis replied. Tony looked at Leon expectantly. Leon hesitated and shook his head. "I'm not comfortable giving you a time pad. I always feel like you'll cause trouble. Jarvis can connect to the TVA network through me." "No way, Leon. Don't you trust a reliable brother like me?" Tony protested. "Ask Wanda," Leon said, turning to her. "Wanda, do you think Tony's reliable?" Wanda shook her head. "See? No need to say more." "All right, Wanda, I'll take you home," Tony said with a mock bow. As night deepened, the story of the multiverse drew to a temporary close. Chapter 1, month later. Unlike the trip where he went crazy after encountering Deadpool in a parallel universe, Liang's life returned to its peaceful routine after he came back to Earth. Every day, his Superman body would bask on the balcony in the sun. The Blood Sea clone studied the laws of the multiverse inside his inner world. The Black Light clone, having absorbed the mutant blood Wanda collected, returned to the Voidland. Although the clones existed in different places and sometimes different universes, Liang's consciousness remained unified, with perceptions from all 3 bodies sharing in real time. In the Voidland, the Black Light Liang once again took the form of a Siberian husky and spent his days with Elios, waiting for chance worlds to fall into the void. There are countless parallel worlds in the multiverse. Almost every day, some world experienced an apocalypse and collapsed. More than 50 worlds had fallen into the void over the past month. Some were destroyed when their anchor person died, some collapsed from energy depletion, and some ended because of Thanos. With so many worlds, there were always odd ones, each following its own strange path to destruction. Whenever the remnants tumbled into the void, Elios would rush up with his jaws wide and gobble them down. Liang, however, would snatch any preserved biological material from the wreckage first. Unfortunately, most of the fallen worlds left little usable tissue, mostly planetary fragments. Occasionally, a survivor clung to a fragment. Once Liang even found an atom warlock, an atom from a movie-like universe, mentally simple but genetically perfect for the Marvel template. He tried to warn Elios that he was strong, but he was quickly chased, calling for his mother, and swallowed in one gulp. After the Blacklight clone absorbed his blood, its gene level jumped 35-fold. Aside from that atom, the strongest survivors were only at about Quicksilver's level, many in number, but nothing spectacular. When he wasn't waiting with Elios, Liang explored the void. Though Elios ate quickly, he couldn't catch everything, and many survivors hid amid the detritus. Liang had encountered groups of Lokis fighting over Thor's corpse once and had robbed them. As he flattened those Lokis, they kept introducing themselves. "I am Loki. god of mischief of Asgard, but when Liang announced that Asgard had long been destroyed, they fell silent. Later, when he was bored, Liang found amusement in teasing the Lokis. After more than a month of scavenging, the Blacklight clone's genetic level had climbed to 80-fold. Liang's understanding of the fundamental nature of life and genes had deepened, but he was still far from being able to directly modify or strengthen the main body's genes. He planned to wait until the Blacklight clone was stronger, then consume the main body's blood, analyze its genome, and develop precise modifications. Once he'd analyzed the main body's genetics, modifying them would be far simpler. He had a plan. He just needed a little more time. Speaking of developments, a few days ago, Old Wang messaged that his new magic academy had been completed and invited Liang to inspect it today. A clear, lively voice interrupted him. "Liang, aren't you supposed to be doing something today?" Liang turned. Gwen stepped out of a time portal in casual clothes, waving. "Didn't Wanda say you have work and can't go shopping with us?" she asked. "I'm leaving now," Liang said, a black line of annoyance creasing his forehead. "I really don't have time to shop." Gwen drifted closer, skirt swaying. "Also, if you want to see Wanda, why do you always come to my apartment first? This isn't a transfer station." After a week apart at the TVA, the little spiders had started their TVA training, mostly learning the taboos of time travel and mission protocols. After training, Holland's spider began dropping by Tony's lab from time to time. The TVA had started assigning them to capture villains. Their first mission was to help Wolverine change his past. Deadpool participated too, appearing in that mission as a small dog. When they were holding the line with Wolverine, Deadpool barked encouragement, wagged his little dog butt afterward, and generally made things awkward. Despite the chaos, the mission succeeded. The X-Men survived, and Wolverine altered his tragic past. He said he'd die with a smile if that was the price. Holland's spider had been deeply moved by Wolverine's story, eyes reddening as he recounted it to Tony. Tony patted his shoulder. Holland's spider was probably very lonely in his own world, so when something interesting happened, he wanted to share it. Tony was happy to listen. When Gwen saw Holland's spider coming over so often, she started tagging along, not to Tony, but to see her best friend Wanda. She insisted she was trying to find Wanda, but her time pad had a habit of malfunctioning. The time portal always opened at Liang's apartment. The first time was an accident. After a few repeats, she knew how to make it happen. Wanda's place was nearby anyway, so Gwen and her friend group turned the downstairs of Liang's building into their usual meetup spot. Sometimes when they went shopping, they dragged Liang and the Natasha sisters along. If Liang refused, they used those infuriating, coquettish tactics they'd picked up from who knew where. Awkward, over-the-top moves that somehow made even his steel body feel powerless. "Next time, don't open the time portal here," Liang said as Gwen bounced toward the door. "I can't help it. My time pad's just a little weird and uncontrollable," Gwen called back, glancing over her shoulder. "Oh, by the way, Liang, latest news, Logan went with Deadpool to Deadpool's universe, Fun 5, to try and save it. B-15 said they did something big 2 days ago, and Deadpool's universe stopped collapsing because Deadpool became the anchor," she added excitedly. "Deadpool became an anchor?" Liang raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? That sounds like his universe is about to end, not stabilize." Gwen winked. "That's why it's big news. I'm going to tell Wanda now." Chapter 11. Changes in the Small World. After Gwen left, Revered Lion rose from his seat, still puzzled. "No matter how I think about it, I can't connect the name Deadpool with an anchor person," he muttered. "What incredible things must he and Wolverine have done? Could they have had a wolf baby together?" When Deadpool is involved, even the wildest ideas begin to feel possible. "I'll ask B-15 for details when I get the chance," he decided. Glancing at the sky, Revered Leon said, "It's about time. I should go to Kamartaj." He opened a portal and stepped through. He reappeared deep in the Kamartaj library. The wooden house at its center was unchanged, still containing the small world. But now, in addition to the fixed portals to the three sanctums, there was a new one. Revered Leon pushed open the door and was immediately met by sunlight mingled with the scent of wet earth. A long breeze ruffled the green grass. He closed the door behind him. The small world was connected to the earth dimension. The sunlight here matched the light in Kamartaj at that moment. In a few hours, moonlight would blanket the land as well. He rose slowly and took a bird's-eye view. The small world lay exposed beneath him in all its detail. Glacial plains to the north, a lava wasteland to the south, plateau mountains to the west, and basin forests to the east. Magical creatures wandered every region, bowtruckles hunting in the trees, herds of Arumptant drinking in rivers across the wasteland, water horses gliding through the lake, and phoenixes soaring over the plateau. The ecosystem was vibrant and complete. Revered Lion could see almost every kind of magical creature, and in surprisingly large numbers. Even phoenixes and keelins appeared in groups. He chuckled inwardly. By the standards of the Harry Potter world, those creatures weren't all traditionally beautiful, but their presence here was undeniable. Mordo and the others did a great job, he said, and flew toward the floating island at the center of the world. Sorcerers on enchanted brooms greeted him as he passed, and he couldn't help sighing at how Kamartaj was starting to resemble Hogwarts. From a distance, the academy area supervised by Master Wong came into focus. When he had first approached the small world days before, Revered Lion had deliberately turned away from this part to observe it later up close. The floating island had been completely transformed, no longer the bare, inverted peak he'd left a month ago. The sorcerers had remade it from top to bottom. They had carved a 500-meter-wide river into the island, using magic to make it flow. One end of the river fell like a waterfall into the lake below, an inverted Milky Way, while the other end drew water back up from the lake into the island, creating a self-sustaining water cycle. From afar, the two flowing columns of water appeared to support the massive inverted mountain. On the island itself, the river split the land in two. Buildings followed the riverbanks. To the left, Oriental-style temples and palaces. To the right, Western Gothic, Baroque, and Rococo halls. Carved beams and painted rafters blended with glazed tiles and gilded facades. Between the two architectural halves, straddling the river, a 1,000-meter-tall tower rose like a bridge. The wide river flowed beneath it. Through the tower's ground-floor windows, Revered Lion could see a fixed portal embedded in the floor, clearly the endpoint of the new portal in the library. In front of the tower floated a huge circular marble platform, 1,000 meters across and tiled with square stones. There was no visible path up to it. Access required a nightmare's carriage or personal power. Many sorcerers strolled about the platform, and among them he spotted Tony, Wong, and Banner. Master Wong's team did an excellent job, Revered Lion murmured as he descended onto the marble. The moment he landed, the gathered sorcerers snapped to the sorcerer's salute. Revered Lion, you're finally here. How does it look? Our civil engineering team outdid themselves on the new academy, Wong crowed, clearly seeking credit. Mordo stood beside him with a satisfied air. And our animal team. The magical creature program has been a huge success. You exceeded my expectations, Revered Lion said, scanning the complex. If I'm not mistaken, the plan is to teach Kamartaj magic in the Oriental-style buildings and Hogwarts-style magic in the Western buildings. Two distinct houses? Exactly, Wong said. We thought separating them would suit the curriculum better, and it gives apprentices the chance to compete. You're thinking ahead, Wong. Good work. Carry on, Revered Lion replied. He turned to Mordo. But what's going on with the magical creatures? I understand you were able to release them successfully, but why did their numbers balloon so quickly? Even phoenixes and keelins are appearing in groups. How did you manage that? Mordo stood straight, ready to explain. Actually, it was Sorcerer Tony who... It was me, Tony broke in. I used cloning technology to reconstruct original bodies from the magical creature materials brought back from Hogwarts. He grinned and nudged Revered Lion. I saw Banner and the others looking worried before and thought, isn't this simple? How about it? Realize once again that you're not as clever as your big brother? Revered Lion narrowed his eyes. Cloning? Did you use the tech from the biohazard world? That technology isn't stable yet. Are you sure the cloned magical creatures won't suffer genetic collapse? I've improved the process. I guarantee there are no problems, Tony answered. He looked at Mordo for support. If you don't believe me, ask him. With the materials from a large number of cloned creatures, we even improved the magic potion. Mordo nodded. That's right, revered Lion. With tissues from many rare animals, phoenixes, fire dragons, and the like, Tony has enhanced the potion formula. The side effects are now nearly non-existent. Last week, we began rolling out the new potion across the sanctum, he continued, voice taking on a more serious tone. Even sorcerers who suffered physical mutations from the old potion can now return to their original forms. However, Mordo's expression grew troubled. Some sorcerers want to keep their mutations. They're unwilling to take the new potion because they prefer the changes they've lived with. There truly are all sorts of people among the mages of Kamar-Taj, and Lion had never been disappointed by that. Then let them be. In this day and age, who would dare call themselves a mage without some unique quirk? Wang didn't mind the jibe. When the academy starts recruiting students, we can even promote its diversity. At the mention of the academy, Wang suddenly brightened. Recruitment? When do we start? His excitement was almost visible. Isn't recruitment urgent? Wang, have you lost weight? Lion squinted at the rotund mage and realized he really had slimmed down, probably from exhaustion. Since returning from Hogwarts, Wang had been single-mindedly focused on building Kamar-Taj's own school. Lion had heard the past 2 months Wang had led mages who used to do civil engineering, working around the clock to finish the buildings, get approval, and open as soon as possible. The name had been chosen early, the Supreme Mage Academy. Plaques in carved stone on the main halls of both branches bore the name in gilded lettering that subtly shifted among different languages, lending a fantastical, magical feel. Wang rolled up his sleeves to show unexpectedly muscular arms. I'm not thinner, I'm stronger, he hastily added. Why would recruitment not be urgent? If we don't recruit, who will the academy teach? Wang, think logically. Before recruiting, you have to set up the admissions process, the academy system, teachers, courses, and where graduates go afterward. Lion gave him a practical task. Write a proposal covering all that. Then we can take the next steps. And don't forget, Wang added, we have one more big thing before the academy opens, the challenge against Asgard. Lion looked around the circular platform they were standing on. Wang, this preliminary arena you built is pretty good. You've been doing civil engineering every day. Don't tell me you won't even be able to fight in the final match against Asgard. The preliminary competition was a trial held inside the sanctuary to select Kamar-Taj's roster for the Kamar-Taj vs. Asgard challenge. It was mid-December, 9 days before Christmas, the date agreed for the challenge, and Lion mostly thought the trip was just to ruffle Thor and Loki's feathers, so he hadn't taken it too seriously. But Mordo, Hamir, and the other archmages had been preparing earnestly for months. Since October, they'd been asking Lion, in pointed, roundabout ways, who would be on the final team. Others came by to ask as well. Lion decided to hold a preliminary contest. Registration had opened a week ago. Jarvis had grouped the entrants using big data analysis based on each mage's skill profile. All the mages were divided into 5 groups. The format was a 2-stage knockout. The first round was a free-for-all. In each group, the 5 mages who defeated the most opponents in a limited time would advance. The second round was one-on-one. The 25 who advanced would draw opponents at random. In the end, 5 combatants and 2 reserves would be chosen. The venue, of course, was the circular platform where they stood. Wang had proposed and hurriedly constructed it himself. That explained Lion's concern that Wang had been spending so much time on construction. Hopefully his power hadn't slipped. Wang, however, was confident. I trained magic while building. My control curse is perfected, and my petrification and deformation curses have improved a lot. Planning to make Hogwarts spells your primary offense? Lion raised an eyebrow. They do work on people. Speaking of which, where's Banner? Is he not here? Is he not entering the prelims? The prelim was tomorrow. On the platform now, more than 200 participating mages were practicing or sparring. When Lion arrived, he'd even seen Tony sparring with Mordo, wand in hand. To Kamar-Taj's mages, Tony and Banner were essentially foreign aid. Lion had invited, but Tony wanted to be more than that. He wanted to be a Kamar-Taj mage in his own right. He planned to use only magic in the first round. Banner had the same idea. Both were confident, but comparatively new. Even with their time at Hogwarts, they'd studied magic for less than a year. So Tony, touchy and competitive, was doing last-minute practice. Banner, quieter and more diligent, should have been here training nonstop, but Lion didn't see him. Instead, he spotted Betty Ross practicing a disarming charm nearby. Mordo explained, Master Banner went to reinforce his case. Because he's competing as a Beastmaster, he needs to carry his fantastic creatures. His case's expansion charm has been showing signs of fading, so he had to reinforce it urgently. Lion stroked his chin. He's really going to fight as a Beastmaster? He's practiced soul magic so well. Won't he use that? Banner had been at Kamartaj nearly 4 months and could already use star projection magic fluidly. He couldn't yet project the Hulk part of himself out of his body, but he could influence the Hulk, wake him quickly, or calm him down. Effectively, Banner had the on-off switch for transforming into the Hulk. Lion had also heard, unsourced but persistent, that Banner and Betty still hadn't reached certain romantic milestones because such situations were too risky for Banner and the Hulk. Sudden hormonal surges could trigger the Hulk despite soul magic. That frustration had pushed Banner into intense study of soul magic, as if he wanted to corral the Hulk entirely. Mordo smiled knowingly. Maybe Banner's soul magic is meant for the most critical moment. Want to bet on when that moment will be? Tony leaned in, more gossip than competitor. Who knows? Betty's not going anywhere. Why are you so anxious for him? Lion glanced at Tony. You should go home more often. Pepper's complained you avoid her and don't come home, especially at night. Tony's face went red. I'm preparing for the challenge. This is interplanet diplomacy. It's normal to miss a few nights. I'm building armor in the lab. Pepper also asked me to ask if you're, well, out of practice, Lion said flatly. Who's out of practice? Tony exploded, then deflated. Tell her I'm just busy with work. Not. You tell her yourself, and be back for the prelim at 9 tomorrow in Kathmandu. Lion conjured a portal and sent Tony directly to Pepper's office. Then he moved among the other mages, pointing out where their spell work faltered and helping them refine techniques before the competition. The next morning, exactly 9 o'clock Kathmandu time, all the sorcerers who had signed up for the preliminaries had gathered on the floating circular platform. Banner stood with his briefcase and his girlfriend Betty. Tony, looking pale, hovered beside them, his gaze fixed on Leon in the air. Wanda and Pietro were there too, along with Mordo. They all faced Leon. I won't say much, Leon began. The purpose of this preliminary round is to select the sorcerers who will move on to the challenge. Let's begin the match grouping and venue allocation. He tossed a spherical projector into the center of the platform. 5 slits opened and 5 illusory light walls shot out, dividing the platform into 5 equal sectors. Huge projection screens flared into being over each sector, each displaying a list of participants, well over 100 names per screen. Next to every name were 3 numbers: opponents defeated, times defeated, and assisted defeats. More than 800 people had signed up for this preliminary round. Each person had 3 lives. A severe injury, being knocked unconscious, or going out of bounds counted as losing 1 life. Defeated sorcerers could be healed by Leon and then re-enter the field, up to 3 total chances. Now, all sorcerers, according to the groupings on the 5 lists, find your combat area, Leon said. The final selection from each group will be determined by your performance in the free-for-all. You have 10 minutes to prepare. The first round of combat is limited to 1 hour. Prepare now. As soon as he finished, each projection screen flashed a 10-minute countdown. Sorcerers hurried to find their names and moved to their designated battlefields. Banner, look! I'm in the same area as you. Let's team up! Wong said excitedly, pointing at screen number 2. That Banner scratched his head. Isn't teaming up a bit unfair? It is, Wong agreed, but everyone's doing it. Around them, familiar faces assigned to the same sector were already clustering together, not to backstab, but to coordinate against opponents. Jarvis had tried to separate the most obvious teams when dividing the groups, and had even suggested alternate competition formats to Leon. But Leon already knew who the final combatants would be. This preliminary round was mostly an opportunity for Tony and the others to show their strength. The exact format didn't matter to him. All right, let's team up, Banner said, and he and Wang walked into Combat Zone 2 together. Wanda, Pietro, Tony, and Mordo were assigned to other zones. The 10 minutes passed quickly. Each sorcerer stood ready in their combat area, their records projected above their heads as 000. When the countdowns hit 0, a red "Go" flashed on all 5 screens. The fights began. Sometimes sorcerer battles are brutally simple. As soon as the match started, nearly half the participants erupted into Hogwarts-style spellcasting: Stupefy, Petrificus Totalis, Levicorpus, Lumos, beams and curses cutting across the field like a swarm of lightsabers. The other half, many who hadn't mastered those spells, were still forming hand seals, readying crimson mystic bands, trying to summon Vishanti's holy sword, or launching themselves on enchanted boots. They became living targets. The first wave of light and hexes overwhelmed them and knocked many out in an instant. A few who were cautious conjured defense, rings of Ragador, seraphim shields, and managed to block the initial onslaught. Leon resurrected the defeated, their records flipped to 0-1-0. Now wary, they kept a defensive ring up with one hand while swinging energy whips or swords with the other. That's when the real back and forth began. The Hogwarts spellcasters, by unspoken agreement, prioritized eliminating those muggles who couldn't cast the same way. Tony was the most outrageous of them. Dressed in a long sorcerer's robe, he fired off spells at a breathless rate. He threw up a Protego in 0.4 seconds, then opened the floodgates. Stupefy, Immobilize, Impedimenta, Colloportus, Confringo, Sectum Sempra, Levicorpus. Incendio, Hair-growing Charm, Antler Charm. He fired whatever came to mind: control spells, combat curses, prank hexes. The cadence of his mouth was faster than anyone could counter. With a verbal speed that blurred, his wand nearly smoked as beams spat from it. He moved forward like a gentleman strolling through rain, and sorcerers fell before his rapid-fire onslaught. Within minutes, Tony's record read 21-3. Banner and Wong's teamwork was equally effective. At the start, Wong conjured a massive seraphim shield. Behind it, Banner snapped open his briefcase and released his companions: Erumpents, Thunderbirds, Graphorns, Zowu, Hippogriffs, a dozen large magical beasts. They charged in a thunder of hooves and wings. Thunderbirds called down lightning. Erumpents tossed enemies into the air with poisonous horns. Graphorns' roars stunned and disoriented. Banner and Wang trailed the beasts, stepping in with supportive spells whenever a sorcerer began to regain composure. Their zone was relaxed. As long as they didn't let opponents counter with something like the mirror dimension, they could win without breaking a sweat. Elsewhere, the zones with Wanda and Pietro were similarly one-sided. The preliminaries had just begun, and already the fields were littered with the effects of a dozen styles of magic clashing: light and shadow, beasts and wards, curses and shields. Each sorcerer fighting not just for survival, but for the chance to prove themselves and advance to the real contest. Chapter 270, End of the First Round. Wanda floated above the arena, weaving chaos magic into Kamartaj's chains. Over 100 scarlet bindings filled the sky, coiling down like a nest of snakes and snaring the mages below. The match had barely begun, and everyone in her section was already immobilized, scores of people wrapped like mummies. 2 minutes later, Jarvis declared those who couldn't break free dead. The battle record above Wanda's head changed to 173-0. That score guaranteed her advancement. No other mage could top that. She released the spell, landed, and stepped back into a corner, letting the stage be reclaimed. The sky of chains dissolved behind her. The mages who had been suddenly eliminated stared at Wanda's retreating back as if seeing a new kind of peril, their will to fight utterly drained. In Section 3, Pietro finished even faster. He held the magical dagger Old Wong had given him months ago and charged the moment the match began, weaving through the crowd so fast the other mages couldn't react before Jarvis marked them dead. He returned to his spot whistling, the dagger flipping between his fingers. His record read 169-0. Done, he said, a cool smile at the corner of his mouth. Mordo, assigned to Section 5, had a far rougher time. As one of Kamartaj's senior archmages, he had plenty of offers to team up, but he refused them all, brusque and proud as ever. He sneered that the whole point of the competition was to select individual talent for the challenge. Winning by numbers would be worthless in Asgard. The slight stung the other mages, who quietly resolved to take him out first. By the time the fight began, Mordo was already surrounded. Cold sweat pricked his forehead. but his power was solid and his tactics flashy. When the rest period ended, he slammed his staff down and unleashed a supercharged Lumos Maxima. A blinding searchlight filled Section 5 and carried into the adjacent areas. Races to cast spells were ruined as the glare forced many to shut their eyes. Some misfired and struck their allies. Dozens who had been staring at Mordo went blind, waving and flailing spells wildly. Colorful magical beams erupted in chaotic bursts like fireworks gone wrong. The allied mages, disoriented by their own friendly fire, suffered heavy losses before Mordo was touched. Mordo then jammed his staff at his belt, formed seals, slapped his palm to the ground, and pulled the mirror dimension over the fighting. He used the spatial shift to try and finish off the dozen or more mages still ganging up on him. But these were tournament mages. Many knew the mirror dimension well enough to contest control. In the end, Mordo managed to kill only those who reacted too slowly, about 20 or so. It was a strong start, but what followed was a brutal siege as the Mage Alliance pressed him from every angle. The hour-long melee devolved into a showcase of martial skill, magical power, and cunning, and spoke to how fiercely the participants fought. When the melee ended, Mordo's record read 31-3-56, a clear sign of how intense and chaotic the fight had been. His attempts at sowing dissent among the enemy cost him as many brain cells as it saved him lives. The first round ended. Jarvis took direct control of the projections and broadcast the end-of-match prompt across the platform. The floating projection walls collapsed and the 5 aerial screens merged. Over 800 entries vanished in an instant. Only 25 names remained. The battle records above those 25 flared gold and expanded like giant lamps over their heads so everyone could see. Wanda and Pietro stood out, of course. Each had taken part in only one engagement and eliminated every mage in their section. A clean, overwhelming victory. Next on the list was Hulk with 236,061. Yes, Hulk, meaning Banner had lost control and Hulk had done the killing. Banner had been relaxed at first, picking through the magical creatures with Old Wang, when the second lives of the mages began, and the beasts were suddenly not enough. Banner started directing the animals to fall back. Then, for reasons no one could immediately explain, one mage struck a Graphorn, the huge beast that served as Hulk's favored mount, with the Vishanti's sacred sword, wounding its front leg. Seeing the Graphorn bleeding enraged the Hulk inside Banner. He felt his blood heat, his heart pound, his body swelling. He shouted a warning, but it was too late. He tore his shirt open, and Hulk burst free. First, he dragged the Graphorn to safety. Then he turned on the crowd with a terrifying grin and charged. The rest was simple carnage. Even Old Wang was marked dead 3 times. Now the match was done. Banner, shirtless and stooped, hugged his chest and lowered his head beneath the horrified stares. He hadn't wanted this. He'd been forced to stand aside as a soul body while Hulk raged. And the helplessness stung, especially knowing Leon was nearby ready to heal, yet unable to stop the transformation. "That's great, Banner." Tony walked over, his own record 89-1-132 flashing faintly above him. He poked Banner's side. "Where's the big guy? Aren't you going to let him out to take a bow? He's amazing. You're set to win this thing." Banner jumped at the poke and gave a rueful, awkward chuckle. "If I could pick, I'd have preferred to win with the creatures." Tony shrugged. "Why not both? Hulk is part of your strength." Banner shook his head. "This is different. Tony, is your face injured?" Tony had a bandage on his left cheek. "You mean this?" He tore the bandage off casually. The cut underneath was already healed. "A sorcerer grazed me with an energy sword." He whined. "They saw a nick like that, and Lion and Jarvis declared me dead, bandaged me up and everything. This competition is totally unfair." "That means they care about you. Or maybe it's because other sorcerers don't heal themselves as fast as you do, so it makes sense to rule you out quickly?" Banner tried to smooth things over. "Reasonable?" Tony shot back. "Then shouldn't you have been disqualified the moment you turned into the big guy?" Banner, scratching his cheek, conceded it sounded reasonable. "So, Tony, you're saying they really do care about you, right?" "What? I would never say that." Tony's eyes drifted to the center of the platform, where Lion was flying back into position. "Look, Lion's probably going to announce the results." Everyone fell silent and turned as Lion took the center. The first round of preliminaries has ended. 25 sorcerers advanced to the second round. The list is as follows. After reading the names, Lion waved and sent all the sorcerers to the edge of the platform. Projection equipment activated, dividing the arena into 12 battle rings. Next, we will begin the second round, one-on-one round-robin matches. All advanced sorcerers, please come forward to draw lots. Others may remain to watch or leave. No one left. They crowded around the rings. The most anticlimactic matches were probably Wanda's. Nearly every opponent she faced surrendered on sight. Even stubborn Tony, after watching the exchange between Wanda and Cassandra, had little confidence. But he was stubborn in other ways too. When he drew Wanda for his third bout, he strode into the ring in full armor. In seconds, Wanda's magic turned his vibranium suit into bread. Tony came off the platform biting a chunk. Unbelievable. Her ability could single-handedly solve the food crisis of the entire universe. I guarantee it, Tony announced, breaking off a piece and offering it to Banner. Let me try. Banner chewed thoughtfully. Not bad, kind of strawberry-ish. Did Wanda base it on bread she once ate? It's not just strawberry. My helmet became a cream puff. My repulsors turned into donuts. Tony munched with a blank expression, then offered pieces to the nearby sorcerers. Me, let me try. Vishanti, is this the legendary Midas touch magic? A crowd gathered, and in minutes, the bread armor was entirely divvied up. Tony wiped cream from his face, snapped on a fresh suit, and used its internal systems to rinse and air-dry himself. The matches went on. The highlight came when Tony and Banner were paired. Tony had specifically told Banner to release the Hulk. He himself went into his vibranium armor. Hulk remembered how Tony had poked at his head with the fungus god armor's fingers back in New York, and Tony remembered the humiliation. By mutual, unspoken agreement, they went all out. Their fist-to-fist brawl electrified the audience. The sorcerers cheered like they were witnessing the apex of magic in motion. What a beautiful left hook. The match ended with Tony's rocket-boosted left hook. Hulk took a direct hit on the chin and flew out of the ring, unconscious. Tony's left-hand armor had been wrecked. As the nanomaterials reformed, they exposed his bloodied, rapidly healing hand. This time you don't get to roar at me again, big guy, Tony said, eyebrow cocked as Banner shrank back to human size. A punch accelerated by a starship thruster isn't easy to take. Tony was confident. Even Lion, who'd just returned to Earth in June, would have been knocked off his feet by that blow. The second round ran into the afternoon. When the final match between Mordo and Grandmaster Daniel finished, Lion stepped forward. The second round of preliminaries has ended. He announced the 5 sorcerers chosen to move on, based on their round-robin performances. The 5 competitors are Mordo, Banner, Tony, Pietro, and Wanda. The 2 reserves are Wong and Grandmaster Hamir. If there are no objections, you may depart. The 7 participants have 9 days to prepare. Everyone else, return to your posts and guard the sanctum and Earth well. We will bring good news. Lion shut down the projection equipment and watched the sorcerers leave, many of them looking relieved and excited. The displays by Tony, Banner, and Wanda had won respect. People no longer thought the 3 newcomers were Lion's external hires. Pietro's only real tool had been a magical dagger from Kamartaj, which made him half a Kamartaj representative. The 4 main performers had given Kamartaj's camp confidence. They didn't expect an easy win, but with such strong players, maybe Asgard's gods wouldn't sweep the whole competition after all. Revered Lion. The 7 who'd been named circled back around him. Lion had intended to leave, but the group lingered. Revered Lion, should we prepare any particular etiquette for Kamartaj? Grandmaster Hamir asked nervously, bowing and adjusting his robes. Eastern sorcerers were formal, and Wong nodded. Last time we opened a portal right in front of Odin. That was a bit abrupt. Should we bring gifts this time? Mordo disagreed. Instead of fretting over gifts, think about how to win. Victory preserves Kamartaj's face. Wong raised his staff. Hamir and I are reserves, so we'll plan more broadly. But the 5 main competitors need to use these next 9 days wisely. Old Wong felt a twinge at not being a main player, but looking at the 5, 4 already showing signs of nervousness, he felt a little relieved. 9 days remained. Pietro and Banner were already getting jittery. By the last day, they might be so anxious they wouldn't sleep at all. Chapter 272, Christmas Day. When the conversation turned to preparation, the 5 main team members all looked at Leon. Leon, how should we prepare over the next few days? Any suggestions? Banner asked. The young and impulsive Pietro rubbed his hands. How about another special training session, boss? The opponent is a god, and Wanda and I only just got our powers. Wanda beside him froze at that. She had already seen the Asgard's power in her visions. Those gods fought up close and wielded artifacts. How many of them could really match Pietro? Still, when she thought of special training inside Leon's inner world, she didn't object and only nodded. Tony, amused, chimed in. Special training? Is that the one Pietro mentioned when he was crying and clinging to my pant leg? 2 hours outside equals 1 month inside? He teased Pietro about his embarrassing past, then looked at Leon. I think that's a great idea. Give us the special training, Leon. Leon raised an eyebrow. 9 days are enough to equal 10 years of special training. By then, even a Norse god won't be able to beat my mark armor. You said 10 years of special training? Leon made a face like a bored old man scrolling his phone. We're dealing with Asgard, not getting ready for the grave. Do you want to jump from 38 to 48 overnight? He realized everyone but Wanda treated the Asgard like mythic invincibles. On their Earth, the Asgard were gods of Norse lore, but their power wasn't as exaggerated as the old myths made them out to be. Leon shook his head. Special training isn't necessary, he said, waving a hand. Don't overthink it. Aside from a few individuals, most Asgardians are roughly on par with Captain America. Their bodies are denser, about 3 times a human's, and much of their strength comes from divine power, he added. If you eat well, sleep well, and keep your head right over the next few days, you'll be fine. His casual confidence eased the group. So we can win. Mordo's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. Banner folded his restless hands and breathed easier. Pietro let out a relieved sigh. He believed Leon so much that if Leon claimed he could turn him into the Flash in the DC universe, Pietro would be 70% convinced on the spot. Only Tony still looked skeptical. You're trying to comfort us, aren't you? Like a prison chef giving a last meal to a condemned man? He said. I'm serious, Leon replied. He opened a portal and stepped through. Relax. Treat it like a trip to an alien world and a friendly spar with the locals. If anything comes up over the next few days, contact me online. I might not always be available, but you can reach me. And remember, meet here on the morning of the 25th. With that, he closed the portal. Tony and the others exchanged looks. So go home, eat and sleep well, and meet on Christmas Day? Pietro asked, breaking the silence. Tony slipped his sling ring on, opened his own portal, and walked through. 9 days. I still need to refine some armor functions. I'm off. He paused and left a warning behind. Don't take Leon's words to mean Asgard are weak. Can someone who isn't strong be called a god? Leon's energy was like a walking sun. An enemy he dismisses isn't necessarily one you can afford to dismiss. The portal collapsed. Tony's words rattled them. A sun? Isn't that a bit much? Wong squinted up reflexively at the real sun. Wanda answered quietly, Mr. Stark isn't lying. She'd noticed a change in Leon today. His aura felt different, even with whatever biofield concealment he used. Under the tug of her chaos magic, she sensed his power pushed to some limit. The energy in him now rivaled a small star. If it were fully unleashed, it could probably wipe out the sun above them without much trouble. She knew the scale. 99.8% of the solar system's mass sits in the sun. Destroying it would mean devastating the whole system. Wanda opened a portal. Leon is extremely strong, but Asgard shouldn't be as terrifying as Mr. Stark says. I'm leaving too. Pietro followed her through. See you in 9 days. If Boss Leon says it's fine, then it's definitely fine. Bye. The main team dispersed one by one. Mordo and Banner remained, looking at each other with hesitation. Leon's reassurances helped, but they were still facing Norse gods, ancient warriors older than their grandparents. Nerves were natural. Want to train together, Master Mordo? Banner offered. Mordo nearly agreed, then thought of the Hulk's last rampage and shook his head. No, you're a brawler. I'm a battle mage. Different styles. He turned to pick a few of the other mages on the platform as sparring partners. Banner glanced at Wong and Master Hamir, but both archmages stepped back in unison. We still need to prepare gifts. Banner sighed and picked up his briefcase. Then I'll go reinforce the undetectable extension charm on this. Time passed as the 7 contenders prepared. Tony spent the days refining his armor, diving into every Norse myth Jarvis had pulled up for Leon. He added no fewer than 10 targeted functions based on the stories. By Christmas Day, he suited up in his new MK-15 Mark armor, the anti-Asgard suit. Nervous and excited, Tony brought Pepper to Kamartaj. When they stepped through the portal, almost everyone was already there. Because of the occasion, people had brought family. They planned to fight in Asgard and celebrate the holiday there. Tony had Pepper. Leon had Natasha, her sister, and Shirley with him. Banner had Betty. Wong had brought his girlfriend Sarah. Only Mordo and Master Hamir arrived alone. Chapter 273, Odin and His Son. On the floating platform, Leon stood at the front, looked over the assembled group, and asked one last time before they left, "Ready to go to Asgard? You might not be used to celebrating Christmas on another planet, but trying something new once in a while isn't a bad idea." Honestly, Leon didn't feel much about Christmas. Even though in this life he had grown up in the Stark household, to him the holiday was mostly just a long break, a day to rest. For many of the others, though, the day carried heavier meaning. Pietro unexpectedly spread his hands and said, "Come to think of it, Wanda and I haven't celebrated Christmas in years." Wanda nodded. Life in Sokovia didn't leave room for celebrations. "When we were with Hydra, it was even worse," Pietro added. "We didn't have any personal space." Natasha joined in. "Yelena and I are the same. The Red Room didn't allow celebrations." "Same here." Shirley squeezed Yelena's hand. "My parents spent Christmas in the lab. Last year, everyone was out hunting down zombies." Banner, surprisingly, chimed in as well. "Now that you mention it, I haven't properly celebrated in about 2 years. After the gamma exposure, I've been hunted by the military." As Leon listened, he realized something grim. Almost nobody present had ever really enjoyed Christmas. Their lives had been too hard. Wong and Hamir shrugged. "We too don't celebrate Christmas either," they said. The conversation drifted toward memories and grudges, so Leon cut it off. "If none of you really celebrate, it's simple. After we beat Asgard, we'll have a big meal there before we come back." "Yay! That's perfect," Yelena squealed. "I've waited my whole life for this. Food of the gods." Shirley laughed. "Only if we win, though. If we lose and stay to eat, that'd be humiliating." Yelena looked to Tony. "Mr. Stark, you can win, right?" Tony never missed a chance to be confident when Leon was near. "We will win. We will win." Shirley and Yelena hugged and cheered. Their excitement was contagious. The rest of the core team watched them and silently promised themselves the same thing. No matter how legendary Asgard's warriors were, their match had to be won. The pressure only tightened. "All right, then. Let's go." Leon turned and addressed the air. "Heimdall, don't bother bringing us over. We'll come ourselves." With that, Leon traced a circle in the air and opened a vast mystic arts portal. On the other side, the royal Asgardian welcome awaited, the All-Father Odin standing solemnly, Asgardian soldiers arrayed in formation, and 2 princes watching with wide eyes. The meeting had been arranged for December 24th. Ordinarily, such arrangements would be handled by diplomatic representatives, Mordo for Kamartaj, Heimdall for Asgard, but this challenge was unusual. In the spiritual realm, Odin had sealed the agreement with a handshake witnessed by the Vishanti, and Leon had meticulously written out penalties for breaching the contract. To avoid mishaps, Odin had only dared to begin making arrangements a month earlier. His aging body could not afford more strain. The last brief exchange with Leon in spirit had nearly pushed him into the Odin sleep. If he angered the Vishanti again, Odin feared he might be sent to Valhalla years early. So on Earth's Christmas Day, Odin came to the Bifrost armed with 2 princes and the royal guard. He gave Heimdall strict orders. "When the Sorcerer Supreme of Midgard calls your name, bring him and the others over." "Yes, your majesty." Heimdall stood at the Bifrost's control, sword in hand. Thor, beside Odin, surveyed the ranks. Every soldier was in full armor, sword at the ready, an impressive honor guard, perhaps the most magnificent in the 9 realms. Thor had never seen his father arrange such a display, especially not to welcome visitors from a backward place like Midgard. "Why are we putting on such a production to welcome a few sorcerers from Midgard?" Thor muttered, displeasure clear in his voice. He hefted Mjolnir. "If we're going to welcome them, the best way is for me to stand in the arena and send them flying one by one." Loki, leaning against a column, scoffed. Midgard is primitive. The last time I visited, they offered me fruit wrapped in iron. He grinned. Why not just go to Vanaheim for a picnic instead of wasting time on them? Odin's single eye swept over his two sons with a patient, cutting steadiness. From his perspective, his sons still had much to learn. In contrast, the Sorcerer Supremes of Kamartaj had produced two extraordinarily powerful practitioners in quick succession. His temper softened slightly as he addressed their complaints. We are not welcoming those sorcerers, Odin said, and both princes' faces shifted at once. One person? Thor brightened. Is he my opponent? I'll bring glory to Asgard. He didn't catch the whole meaning. Loki, for once, let Thor bluster on. Odin watched them and sighed quietly. There was only one person he truly cared about in this matter. Leon. Just then Heimdall reported crisply, Your Majesty, the Sorcerer Supreme has refused the Bifrost's pull. Odin's brows tightened. He refuses the Bifrost? Are the people of Midgard such cowards that they won't even step into Asgard's gate? Thor's voice hardened. He had little patience for cowardice. Loki gave a cold chuckle. Typical. They're too afraid to enter our realm. I say, we cancel this ridiculous challenge. Odin's expression didn't change, but there was more beneath his words than his sons realized. He had not come for a ceremony, nor to be insulted by arrogance. He had come because one man mattered to him, one man the Nine Realms could not afford to underestimate. Loki stared out past the Bifrost toward the star-studded void. His contemptuous look seemed to pierce the universe itself as he imagined the scene on distant Midgard. With Asgard's prestige, those mages from a backward world should be trembling in their robes, he thought. Even if the Sorcerer Supreme enjoyed some favor with his father, who would dare suggest a contest between Midgard's weak sorcerers and Asgard? She was an ignorant commoner who didn't know her place. Father, let me go to Midgard again, Loki said. As the Nine Realms' foremost mage, I'll teach them a lesson in humility. He pictured those provincial mages falling to their knees like peasants before an emperor and smiled. This would be the perfect chance to prove himself to Odin. Odin only glanced at Loki, raised Gungnir, and stepped forward. They're here, he said. Odin's single eye turned to the far end of the Bifrost. At the bridge's terminus, near the spherical control chamber, a golden spark flashed through the void. It ignited like kindling and multiplied until a circular portal opened. 14 human-shaped figures from Midgard looked out. Most wore yellow-brown mage robes. A few were in casual clothes. As the portal stayed open, they looked around with the casual curiosity of tourists rather than the awe Loki expected. They inspected Odin, his sons, and the honor guard like a group visiting an ancient imperial ruin that happened to be open for the day. One even commented aloud that the emperor's throne didn't look as comfortable as his own workstation. Thor and Loki were both taken aback. Were these really the Kamartaj mages here for a challenge, or some vacationers who'd taken a wrong portal? How had they opened a gate from Midgard to Asgard? Loki had never heard of such a long-distance portal, apart from the Bifrost, and must they whisper so loudly? Oh my God, are those? A man with a peculiar beard muttered. The fat old guy, the hot male lead beside him, and he gestured at Loki, uncertain. I can't tell about the last one, he's not holding a weapon. Tony, why are they glaring at us? They're so serious. Should we bow? A bespectacled man asked. Wow, look, those waterfalls are spilling into space. So cool, a blonde woman cried. Yeah, it's beautiful, like the floating islands in Mini-World, a little girl added. Loki could barely keep his expression under control. How could these Midgarders have no respect for deities at all? You, glasses guy, if you say you should bow, why aren't you already kneeling? And those people fawning over the river like children, utterly ignorant. They were exactly the disorganized rabble he'd expected. No, worse, a bunch of bumpkins who'd never seen the world. If Odin weren't next to him, Loki would have shouted for them to kneel. Instead, he ground his teeth in silent contempt. Then the man in the long robe, the only one wearing a full-length mage's garment, looked up and, seeing Odin, nodded familiarly. Long time no see, Your Majesty Odin, he greeted. He raised an eyebrow, and as he had at their last meeting, he dispelled the biofield that had been concealing his true power. A peak realm lord aura and the crushing will of an immortal rolled out from him. Odin's white hair seemed to bristle. his single eye widened in astonishment. In only a few months, this man's strength had increased beyond recognition. Odin's face betrayed a shock, like someone seeing Bor emerge from Valhalla. Satisfied, the man re-enveloped himself in the concealment. Although the man's reveal had been aimed at Odin, Loki still met his gaze. The immortal-level willpower slammed into Loki like a star exploding. Loki's mind scattered, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. "Loki! Loki!" Thor was instantly at his brother's side, scooping him up. "Loki, what's wrong? What happened?" Thor shook him and felt Loki's aura rapidly dimming. "Father! Father! Look at Loki!" he cried, panic and anger mingling as he pointed at Leon and the others. Did you do this?" "Thor, calm down. Loki has simply fainted," Odin said after a quick assessment. The pressure of Leon's will was immense. Looking into those eyes felt like having one's soul sliced. It was no surprise Loki had passed out. Fortunately, it was only a crushing imprint on the will, not a direct attack. Loki would be weakened and unconscious, not fatally harmed. "Take him back to the palace. Let Frigga tend to him." Odin turned to the man who had revealed himself, Leon, who had already flown to their side. "Lord Leon, our challenge will have to be delayed for a few hours." Leon looked awkwardly at the pale-faced Loki in Thor's arms. "I was presumptuous, Your Majesty Odin," he said. "I know some methods of soul healing. Allow me to accompany you and take a look." Odin inclined his head. "Then I will trouble you, Lord Leon." Thor stared at Leon. "You actually hurt Loki?" "Thor, Loki brought this on himself." Odin snapped as he and Thor flew toward the heavenly palace with Loki cradled between them. He had no sympathy for someone who recklessly stared at greater power and then complained when they were overcome. Leon followed them. "Come to think of it," Leon said, "the last time we met, Your Majesty, you tested me in the same way. There weren't any bystanders then." Thor was stunned. Was it really Loki's fault after all? Before they left, Odin made sure Heimdall escorted the Kamartaj guests on a tour of Asgard. The honor guard that had come to greet them barely had time to begin the welcome ceremony before it was hurriedly wrapped up. Tony and the others followed Heimdall, bewildered, walking along the Bifrost into Asgard. "What just happened? Did Leon take out one of the opposing fighters?" Tony whispered. "Does he really not trust our strength that much?" "I don't know," Mordo said. "But the last time I came here, Leon and Odin stared at each other for a few minutes and then suddenly made peace." Wong nodded. "That sounds like a clash in the soul domain. The horned man who fell might have been affected." "Really? So Bambi was innocent," Tony mused, rubbing his chin. He had no idea how his armor would counter something like that. As the group whispered, Heimdall, acting as their escort, turned and said, "He is not Bambi. He is Prince Loki, one of His Majesty's sons." "Your prince?" Tony's surprise showed. He matched his pace to Heimdall's. "I haven't introduced myself, Tony Stark." "Tony Stark. I know you," Heimdall said, looking straight ahead. "I know all of you." Tony paused. "Wow, the chubby old His Majesty called you Heimdall, right? You're not quite how the stories make you out to be." Heimdall said nothing, his gaze fixed forward, expressionless as if he were a living guidepost. "Not speaking? Very godlike." Tony jabbed. He scanned the surroundings. "So tell me about your Asgard. The gravity feels a little stronger than Earth's. And is that water flowing out into the universe?" They stood on a bridge of refracted, seven-colored light, the Bifrost, suspended above the sea of Asgard. Light seemed solid beneath their feet. A river of luminous water ran along the bridge and spilled over the world's edge in a silver cascade into deep space. They were standing right at that edge, watching millions of tons of water fall away. "Asgard is not different from the other star realms of the Nine Realms," Heimdall said at last. "It resembles a celestial body, but it is not a planet. It has no rotation or orbit. It is a world shaped by the old cosmology, circular heavens, square earth, as told in your myths." As the gatekeeper of Asgard, Heimdall had the air of someone perfectly suited to be a guide. He spoke endlessly and with strange, captivating precision about his homeland. Everyone listened. After walking along the Bifrost, Heimdall led them to a stable and had them mount horses for the ride into the city. Tony groaned. "This bridge is basically an Einstein-Rosen tunnel, power enough to level a planet, and we're riding horses?" "It's not just primitive and technical," Wong said drearily. "Here, divine power and magic mingle. Horses are respectable." Asgard itself glittered in gold. Buildings rose like blades of metal, their facades gleaming like thousands of golden swords thrust into the sky. The central palace was a forest of gilded spires. Light shone so brightly it threatened to blind. Even from a distance, the place radiated a warrior's dignity and nobility. As they rode past, the Asgardians stared. News of the upcoming match had spread. Most faces wore skeptical curiosity. Apart from Tony and Pietro, who obviously had muscle, the rest were women or middle-aged, hardly the image of brute strength. Those onlookers began to shake their heads, openly dismissive. These challengers could never match Thor and the Warriors Three. "They're looking down on us," Tony said, overhearing a whisper. "You heard right," Banner muttered. "I heard someone say my muscles were flabby and I've got belly fat." "It's not just muscles," Betty sulked beside him. "They don't even seem to regard women." Natasha's voice was level. "They revere strength above all. Women are undervalued because, traditionally, they're not seen as strong. And they only mention Thor when they speak of the princes," Wanda added. "Maybe they don't think much of Loki." "That's true," Heimdall said. "In Asgard, strength is recognition. If you want respect, you must show it in battle. If you want to prove yourselves, perform well in today's match," Tony said, chin lifting. He glanced at Wanda. He still didn't know how Asgardian strength measured up, but Wanda's power was a trump card he trusted. "We have an ace up our sleeve." Heimdall offered the faintest hint of a smile. "I have seen your battles. You are exceptional. I look forward to seeing you teach the princes a lesson." They toured Asgard for 3 hours and even ran into the Warriors Three at the palace. The exchange had been terse. The Warriors Three left with sharp words. Jarvis's scans had shown their physicals no greater than Pietro's, an encouraging sign for Tony. At the brightest hour, they were led into Asgard's gladiatorial arena. It was a colosseum in form, a circular field ringed by tiered seating already packed with Asgardians. Odin and Leon stood together on the main dais, surrounded by the Asgardian warriors chosen for the event. The lineup included the 2 princes and the Warriors Three, plus an unfamiliar female fighter. Prince Loki, who had collapsed earlier, had recovered and now stood with a sullen expression. Leon caught sight of Tony and the others, and with a gesture, levitated them onto the main platform. The crowd roared. Odin addressed the arena, explaining Kamartaj's origins and the meaning behind the scheduled bout. He made a point of introducing Leon and stressing the alliance between Asgard and Kamartaj. Leon then took the floor to offer his own words. When the opening remarks concluded, both contingents moved back to their respective preparation areas to ready themselves. The first match would begin in half an hour. Chapter 276, The Strongest versus the Weakest. "Leon, how do we decide our order of appearance?" Tony asked first, surrounded by the team inside the lounge. "Since it's Asgard's home game, they'll choose who goes out first, and then we'll pick our contestant in response," Leon explained. "They'll pick for the first match, then we'll pick for the second, and so on until one side reaches 3 wins. Leon waved a hand. "Their first contestant is the great prince, the thunder god Thor. I think any of you can give it a try." This Thor hadn't awakened his full thunder god power yet. He was essentially Thor with Mjolnir. Even if Mordo went up, there was a chance. Still, the main team members stiffened when they heard who their opponent would be. Thunder god Thor. The protagonist from that blockbuster movie, right? He must be their strongest, Tony said. The second prince, Loki, just made himself look foolish at the welcoming ceremony. They need a morale boost. That's why they put the great prince first, Tony continued, his big eyes sweeping the others. If we beat him, it'll hurt Asgard's morale and make the rest of the fights easier. Banner nodded. Then we should send our strongest. Everyone instinctively looked at Wanda. I don't mind, Wanda said. No, not right, Tony cut in. He walked a few steps, arms folded. Matching strongest versus strongest is stupid. We don't know much about these Asgardians. Wanda should only go if she's practically certain of victory. Wanda opened her mouth. She wanted to say she was confident. A thunderous roar interrupted her. Tens of thousands of voices rose, chanting Thor's name. Everyone moved to the lounge door and peered through the narrow gap in the thick wood. Thunder God Thor had already walked into the arena, Mjolnir in hand, smiling broadly and greeting his people. The crowd answered with frenzied cheers. Is this guy Asgard's popular star? Incredible. He's more popular than I am at a press conference, Tony said. Everyone below him is his subject. Of course they'll cheer, Pietro replied. You don't hand out checks to the audience at press conferences. How do you know I don't? Tony asked him oddly. Ah, you really hand out money to the audience at press conferences? In fact, no, I don't. Tony shivered, then clapped his hands. All right, you see how popular he is. We're already under pressure fighting away from home, and it'll be worse against him. So I think, Tony looked around at the team, I should go first. The room fell silent. Why you, Tony? Banner asked, puzzled. I thought you'd say that, since they sent their strongest, we should send our weakest. Tony patted Banner's shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. Smart, Banner. That's exactly what I was thinking. Then shouldn't I go? I'm the weakest here, Banner protested. No, I'm the weakest, Tony insisted. I'll take him. Win or lose, your odds in the other matches will be better. Banner pointed out, but even Hulk lost to you yesterday. I'm the weakest. The two began arguing over who was weakest. Pietro and Mordo exchanged baffled looks. If Tony and Banner were both claiming to be the weakest, were they actually stronger than they let on? While Tony and Banner bickered, Leon decided. Tony will go, he said, spreading his hands. Thor's power is centered in Mjolnir. Tony's strength is mostly his armor. Their fight should be interesting. Everyone frowned. How could the Sorcerer Supreme be looking for interesting at a time like this? Leon, I think I should go, Mordo offered. I'm the weakest. If I lose, it won't matter. Tony cut him off. How are you weak, Mordo? You're a great sorcerer. You can open the mirror dimension with a few hand seals. You're our trump card. He set an arc reactor on his chest and braced a hand on the door. And the Sorcerer Supreme has made his decision. How can it be changed? Tony yanked the heavy bolt out of the door. Everyone wait for my report. Jarvis will send you the analysis data. As Tony pushed the door open, Pepper emerged from the family section. She walked up to him, straightened the collar of his sorcerer's robe, smoothed the wrinkles, and leaned in to whisper, Don't get hurt, or you won't be able to get out of bed for a week. Whether she meant he'd need a week of recovery or was teasing him, Tony's pupils contracted and his face went a few shades paler. Are you worried about me or trying to scare me? He said, not taking the bait. Isn't this a better time for a hug? Of course I'm worried, she said. Golden photon energy shimmered around her as she gave him a gentle hug. The bright energy only seemed to stir something darker in Tony as he stepped into the sunlight and ascended the arena stage to face the cheering Asgardians. His stride was unsteady enough to make Leon smile. For most warriors, a loved one's hands tidying a collar and a tender embrace would make them feel braver. For Tony, it brought a hollow sadness, like wind sighing over cold waters. The team watched him go. Banner turned to Leon. Why did Tony volunteer to face Thor first if he isn't the weakest? That's because you don't really understand him yet, Leon said, hands clasped behind his back in a manner that gave him a calm, knowing presence like the Ancient One. Tony knows he isn't the weakest. That's precisely why he wants to go. He thinks sending Wanda might not guarantee a win, Leon continued. Sending the weakest would risk immediate elimination without learning anything. Tony plans to go himself, push with everything he's got to probe Thor's strength, and use that to judge Asgard's other fighters. He also hates being overshadowed. Leon shrugged. That's another important reason. It didn't really matter who went first. Leon had already arranged backup at Kamartaj, 4 foreign fighters, including Scarlet Witch and the Hulk. If they still lost, he'd tie Tony up the next day, force-feed him Zeus spring water, and throw him onto Pepper's bed. Every corner of the gladiator arena was chanting Thor's name. As Tony stepped onto the platform, he could almost feel like he was fighting the crowd itself. It was only when he stopped in front of Thor that the Thunder God slowly lowered his raised arm and pressed his palm outward. The roaring arena fell silent, as if boiling water had been plunged into liquid nitrogen. Tony was once again reminded of the popular appeal of the big golden retriever standing before him. He'd nicknamed Thor that in his head long ago. Broad-shouldered, with that simple sunlit grin, Thor gave off the same earnest, friendly vibe. Hey, Midgardian sorcerer, Thor boomed. I am Thor, son of Odin. Your sorcerer supreme is very powerful, someone even my father respects. Thor planted his hands on his hips and laughed. But why is my opponent you? I thought the bald sorcerer would step up. Wong? Mordo? Tony said. My father said he came to Asgard with your Sorcerer Supreme last time, Thor said, thinking he was being helpful. So he must be strong too, right? The battle hasn't officially started yet. Why don't you go call him up? Otherwise you might get hurt fighting me. Thor raised Mjolnir and gestured toward Tony. After all, he's too strong. Thor's tone left no doubt. He expected Tony to be an easy target. Oh, really? Tony nodded as if nothing were wrong. You want me to call him up? Exactly. Haha, you go get that sorcerer. I'll wait here. Thor was delighted when Tony seemed to accept his suggestion. Tony took a few steps toward the lounge, then stopped, turned, and cocked his head. You know, he said, on Earth, when we deal with a simple-minded golden retriever who's been sunning on the beaches of, say, Los Angeles, we don't send in our heavy hitters. Thor blinked, puzzled. What? Tony tapped his chest. I'm enough. I can handle those forever smiling types. Oh, right. I don't much like the point break type, so I won't pull my punches. The smile on Thor's face faded. He narrowed his eyes. Midgardian sorcerer, did you just provoke me? You call this provocation? Tony shook his head. This is a pre-battle declaration of victory. Every WWE match has one. So you're going to fight me. Thor gripped Mjolnir. We already are. Tony charged, empty-handed. After his last fight with Captain America, Tony had secretly studied martial arts for months. Now he wanted to test Thor's raw physicality. Seeing Tony come unarmed, Thor dropped Mjolnir to the ground and met him bare-fisted. The arena erupted again, thunderous for Thor, convinced their prince was the finest warrior. Their fists met on the platform, and Thor staggered back 3 steps. His eyes went wide in disbelief. Thor could always call Mjolnir and wield divine power, but a large portion of his strength flowed through the hammer. Unarmed, he was weaker than Tony, whose single-arm strength was, according to the suit's estimates, in the hundreds of tons. The few steps Thor took back stunned him and the Asgardians alike. Cheers choked off like a throatful of salt. Even Tony was surprised. He'd expected a heavy hit, as he knew what it felt like to be thrown by the Hulk. His armor could attach during the launch and start the next round. But this mythic thunder god was so easily pushed around. Tony's doubts didn't stop him. Years of training meant his fists moved fast and precise. He closed in, grabbed Thor's wrist, and rained short, sharp punches into him. Thor was driven backward with each blow. The punches weren't doing crippling damage, but they burned his pride in front of everyone. Ah! Mjolnir! Thor roared and snatched the hammer up from the ground. The instant he gripped the handle, his divine might surged. Strength flooded into him, and he unleashed his full power. Tony pressed the attack with a flurry of blows. Thor leapt back to dodge, swung Mjolnir in a wide arc, and drove it into Tony's chest. The impact sounded like breaking bone. The blow sent Tony tearing into the air and knocked some of the wind out of him. Pain split his ribs. His mouth twisted, but his eyes lit up. Jarvis, start collecting data. It already started before you moved, sir, came the calm reply. Good, Tony grunted. Nanomaterial poured from his arc reactor and stitched over him, forming a golden-red shell, the Mark 15. The suit's outer alloy was a gold titanium nanoweave with key components grafted with enchanted metal from Kamartaj and nanovibranium embedded internally to synthesize weapons or defenses on demand. It was an amalgam of everything Tony had learned. Thor swung Mjolnir and charged from below. Tony powered the suit thrusters and hovered, not to evade but to meet him. With his right hand, he unfolded a vibranium shield. Jarvis, sync with me? Yes, sir. Mjolnir slammed into the shield with a ringing collision. Tony hung in the air, but the hammer's recoil slammed back against Thor, throwing him heavily onto the arena floor. The Asgardian audience gasped, disbelief and worry filling the stands. So this is what you call strength? Point Break Protagonist? Someone jeered. Tony landed a few paces from Thor. The Thunder God peered up at the armored figure, and, after a moment, his grin returned. Fierce now, full of battle lust. You're not a sorcerer? I don't much like fighting sorcerers. A warrior like you will do nicely. He swept Mjolnir in a great circle, then raised it to the sky. Lightning stabbed from the hammer straight up, and the arena sky blackened with roiling clouds. Thunder rolled. Try this, Midgardian warrior, Thor bellowed, hurling bolts of lightning like living snakes toward Tony. Sir, the vibranium shield can't fully negate that lightning, Jarvis warned. Then don't block it, Tony said with a grin. Use the special feature I designed for fighting the gods. I never thought I'd get to use it. The suit's nano-weave reconfigured. Mechanical limbs and nodes snapped out and formed a four-legged energy harvester in front of Tony, spinning to face the incoming lightning. When the bolt struck, the device sucked them in and overloaded, the armor crackling with blue electricity. Energy at 200%, sir, Jarvis reported. Perfect, Tony said, eyes flashing. The absorbed energy rerouted through the suit. His right arm reconfigured into a focused energy cannon, firing a concentrated beam straight back at Thor. Chapter 278, Chapter 13, The Resurrection of Thor. The moment the fungus god armor's energy hit 200%, Tony knew he'd made the right call, adding targeted new functions. The arc reactor in the fungus god armor still used that new element Leon called a tesseract isotope, the most perfectly structured element in the universe. The element was the same, but the arc reactor's structure was different. Tony had upgraded it with warship energy technology from the alien world's optical computer. Now a single arc reactor could do the work of 10 old ones, its peak output per second neared 100 billion joules. And yet the lightning crackling from the big blonde man across the arena was actually backfeeding the arc reactor to 200%. Tony thought, if this lightning had hit the armor without precautions, it might have been charred before it could even absorb the charge. Fortunately, he'd prepared. Jarvis, funnel all the overload into the laser cannon. Let the lightning show-off taste his own electricity, Tony ordered. Every component of the nanofungus god armor began to operate in precise unison. With Jarvis's help, the enormous energy converged on the laser cannon. The muzzle that normally took minutes to charge flared instantly. Golden light brightened until it looked like a tiny sun rising in the arena. The Asgardian spectators felt a chill as the cannon's potential registered. If it fired at full power, it could obliterate a small comet. Hearts leapt, and the crowd roared for their prince to dodge, panic and encouragement mixing into a single shout. The more they screamed, the more stubborn Thor became. He didn't dodge. He didn't try to stop Tony from charging the shot. Instead, he swung Mjolnir, waiting. As the scorching beam cut the distance between them, he roared, hurled Mjolnir, and charged straight into the laser. Thor hit the beam head-on. The two forces collided with brutal violence. The impact sent rock and debris flying. Chunks peppered the energy shield that ringed the arena and skittered to the ground. A moment later, the hammer flew free and Thor followed it, both shot out of the clash. The laser struck the energy barrier and sputtered out after a few seconds. Thor slammed into the shield and slid down it, like a hunk of meat stuck to a wall, then lay still. The Asgardians in the stands went silent. Tony stood frozen in the arena. Everyone in the VIP lounge was equally stunned. On the main stage, Odin sighed and turned his face away, no longer looking at his foolish son. Mordo leaned forward, eyes wide at Thor lying motionless in the sand. Why did he go straight at it? He asked, dumbfounded. Wong shook his head. Maybe he forgot his glasses today. His myopia is terrible. He meant to dodge but ran right into it. Tony blinked, then smirked inwardly. Overconfident or brainless? He glanced down as Jarvis reported, Sir, scans indicate Thor is likely unconscious. Damn, Tony muttered. I haven't even tried half the fungus god armor's functions, and I still had the 10 rings to test, yet I win. He is Asgard's strongest warrior, but brains aren't included in that package, Wong said. Tony switched the armor out of laser mode. He looked toward the main stage, searching for some official to declare the match over. Excuse me, does no one keep score here? Is there no referee? He fixed his gaze on Odin. Before the Allfather could respond, the door to the Asgardian warrior's lounge opened, and Loki stepped out, horned helmet gleaming. He glanced at Thor, then leveled a look at Tony. Foolish Midgardian, look well at the god before you. Do you think you have won? No, you have merely awakened divine wrath. Tony frowned. One fool had fallen. Now a second showman had appeared. Jarvis interjected. Sir, Thor appears to be waking. Less than half a minute? Tony said. He watched as Thor's eyes remained closed, but his fingers twitched. That counts as waking? Oh man, a metallic hum sliced the air beside him. Tony took an instinctive step back as Mjolnir whistled past and landed in Thor's hand. Lightning coalesced around the god like a living thing, wrapping from hair to eyes, crackling along his body. Thor rose with a roar and swung. Mjolnir struck Tony's chest like a small mountain. The nanofungus god armor at that point shattered. Tony was hurled backward. Thor showed no mercy. He pursued immediately and hammered again and again. The nanobots swarmed to mend the damaged sections, but were destroyed as fast as they repaired. Armor fragments scattered. Thor looked intent on finishing him in one go, pummeling Tony through the air. Then Tony felt the hit rebound. The damaged nanobots on his chest were replaced in an instant with vibranium plating, and a heavy blow thrust Thor backward. Tony seized the opening, fired his thrusters, and put distance between them. "This guy's different when he has Mjolnir," Tony said, seriousness cutting through his adrenaline. Mjolnir might be his true weapon, his fuel. He wasn't done. "Jarvis, deploy 10 rings mode." Tony produced the 10 rings mid-flight. With Jarvis's coordination, the rings slotted into various joints of the fungus god armor and flared to life. A tide of energy spilled over the suit, cloaking it in a shimmering gauze of power. "All right, my friend who's back from the dead, let's continue." Tony stopped retreating and turned to charge. Thor swung Mjolnir in a wide, cutting arc. "Perfect timing," he bellowed. They met again, midair. This time, Tony fought with fists and feet, no gadgets to be relied on. Thor, realizing the lightning would only be absorbed or exploited by Tony's armor, stopped trying to electrocute him and simply fought with the hammer. The battle traded the sky for the arena and back again, evenly matched. The stands erupted once more. Asgardians shouted their lungs out for their prince. Tony pulled away only when exhilaration hit its peak. "Man, that's a rush. Now I know how Leon felt punching Dormammu," he laughed. "Time to try a little magic," he told Jarvis. "Switch to magic mode. Prep the magic-powered palm cannon." Chapter 279, Thunder God. Wuzon Jarvis was as efficient as ever. He executed whatever Tony asked, even when the command was strange. He even understood the function of Tony's magic-enabled palm cannon. To Thor, it was a weapon of mass destruction. With Jarvis's help, Tony switched the armor's mode in a heartbeat. The nanomaterials on the arms and chest rippled like water, and in an instant were replaced by magical metals. Parts of the suit took on an agate-like sheen, highly conductive to magic. "Magic-powered palm cannon ready, sir." "Excellent." Tony halted mid-retreat. He raised his right hand toward Thor. The magic in him connected with the 10 rings, and the palm cannon flared to life. This time, the muzzle glowed a deep, mysterious red, less like a tech beam and more like sorcery. To Thor, it didn't matter. He scowled. "Another one of those laser things," he said, then suddenly grinned with unshakable confidence. "The same trick won't beat Thor twice, Midgardian." He swung Mjolnir. Lightning from the storm-clotted sky converged on him, enveloping him in bolts until he looked like a human lightning rod. The Asgardian crowd roared. What they loved most was the spectacle of a warrior rising from defeat to trample his enemy in a glorious comeback. Thor charged at Tony at full tilt. "Come, give me everything you've got." Thor assumed Tony was repeating his previous trick, the same energy beam, and planned to smash it with brute force. He hammered Mjolnir, gathering thunder to tear the beam apart. But Tony wasn't doing what Thor expected. He watched the charging god and could not make sense of it. Is he serious? Is he intent on running headfirst into this again? Are all these gods single-minded? Tony muttered while channeling power. "Whatever. If he wants it, he can have it. Jarvis, prepare." With Jarvis's aid, Tony aimed and yelled, "Expelliarmus!" A crimson beam erupted from the palm cannon, punching a path up through the sky toward Thor. It was thicker than Tony's arm and slammed into Mjolnir. Thor still had that heroic smile, like a man who believed he could flatten mountains with his hammer. But the red beam didn't shatter the hammer. Instead, it severed Thor's connection to Mjolnir. His divine power plunged away. The beam knocked Mjolnir free and then struck Thor in the chest, sending him flying into the arena's energy shield. He blacked out and slid to the ground. Even as he fell, that grin stubbornly clung to his face, heroic and dazed in equal measure, so earnest he looked almost foolish. Silence fell. The Asgardians who had been cheering a moment ago stood frozen, mouths ajar. They stared at Mjolnir as it thudded to the ground, then at Thor sprawled on the arena floor, and wondering if they were all sharing the same hallucination. Tony hovered above them, arms out. Well, I didn't expect the Expelliarmus cannon to be that effective, he said. Not only did it knock his hammer away, it cut off his power source. That big golden retriever is kinda dumb, he added, shrugging. So dumb it almost feels criminal. I actually prepped for months for this guy. It proves your preparations were worthwhile, sir, Jarvis replied evenly. Your assessment was sound. Thor derives most of his power from Mjolnir. Sever that link, and you can beat him. Tony puffed up with pride. Ha! Lion used to say that Harry Potter's Expelliarmus was as powerful as an unforgivable curse. Mine's definitely stronger than Potter's. He grinned. From the beam alone, I'd say my style beats anything from Hogwarts. Sir, Jarvis cautioned, press the advantage. He'll likely regain consciousness in under a minute. Oh, the protagonist's got stamina, eh? Tony drifted down to where Thor lay. Aside from rolled eyes and a bit of blood at the mouth, Thor had no obvious wounds. Tony could tell he'd probably wake up as before, snap his fingers, and summon Mjolnir again. We need to finish him off, Jarvis. His left palm flared red, and the Expelliarmus cannon fired again, driving Thor back to the edge of the energy shield and stripping the armor from his body. Tony's other palm lit up at the same time, blue-silver, crackling with electricity. He's out, and he's lost his lightning, Tony said. Let's see how he likes it from the other side. A while earlier, Tony had dosed himself with a new bloodline potion that included Thunderbird blood. Thunderbirds control weather and lightning. With that bloodline factor somewhat incorporated, Tony could generate crude lightning with his magic. Channeling the 10 rings and conducting it through the armor's enchanted metals, he fired a pillar of lightning several centimeters thick from the palm cannon toward the unconscious god. Thor twitched under the electricity. His mouth spasmed, his eyes rolled further back, and his body convulsed. His armor had been shattered by the Expelliarmus shot. He was practically naked and shaking like a live wire. Tony blinked in surprise. Wow, so Thor can actually be hurt by lightning? He increased the magic frequency and the convulsions intensified. Tony adjusted the lightning rhythm now and then, amused by Thor's reaction as the Asgardian spectators watched in horrified disbelief. Their faces were a blend of grief, shame, and rage. Odin, on the main platform, turned ashen. Enough! Odin cried, striking Gungnir into the ground. An invisible shockwave spread outward. People swayed and fell. Before the wave reached Tony, Lion stepped into the arena. He casually pierced the energy shield and countered Odin's power with a flick, dispersing the creeping force. Excuse me, everyone, Lion said coolly as he picked Thor up and tossed him toward the main platform. Prince Thor's vitality is unusually tenacious, and there are no rules limiting this match. Tony had no choice but to continue. Odin took Thor, his face a dark thundercloud. Kamartaj wins, he said through clenched teeth. The second bout will begin in half an hour. He could accept Thor's loss, but he could not accept seeing his son pinned down and electrocuted in front of everyone. This was an insult to Asgard itself. He'd underestimated these Midgardian mages. They weren't just strong, they were flashy, ruthless, and dangerously effective. Chapter 3. Tony's victory had done more than embarrass Asgard. It forced Odin to rethink his contempt for the sorcerers of Kamartaj. After Tony's analysis and return, Kamartaj sent out their next contestant, Wanda. Odin, for once, used his divine sight to study her for a few seconds. Then he fell quiet. He sighed, stared up at the stars beyond Asgard, and said nothing more. No one could tell whether he was doubting his own judgment or regretting that he had not fallen in battle long ago, for perhaps then it would be Thor, not him, standing humiliated now. Kamartaj did not play by Asgard's rules. Odin understood that Leon had prepared carefully when he proposed this challenge months before. He stopped meddling with the lounge's seating arrangements and, from a distance, signaled to Leon to return to the main platform. A few minutes later, Asgard answered by sending Sif into the arena. Since the opponent was a female sorcerer, they had chosen their most accomplished female warrior. Thor, now sober, had dragged Loki to hide behind the wooden door of their lounge. Through a narrow crack, they watched the match. "Why don't we go out and watch?" Loki asked. "I just lost a match, Loki," Thor snapped. "I was beaten by that Iron Man, sprawled like a drowned fool. How would anyone dare stare?" Loki spread his hands. "You are Thor, Prince of Asgard." He knew exactly why he'd asked. He wanted to needle his brother. Besides, Sif will want your cheers. She'll do better with you watching, and we might win back what you lost." Thor hesitated, then forced a laugh. Sif is one of the strongest warriors in this region. She proved that on her own. She won't lose. And that Iron Man, he must have been the strongest of Midgard's fighters. No one's stronger than him. Of course not. Thor spoke the words as if reassuring himself. Loki, folding his hands behind his back, pressed the point. "But you lost, brother, and badly, like a drunken dwarf. How can you be sure Sif won't lose too?" Thor's face went pale as he remembered the earlier defeat. He'd scoffed at the contest at first, thinking it a parlor trick against weaklings. Now he felt ridiculous. "No, Loki, that wasn't a dwarf. What was it then? An eel electrocuted and floating to the surface?" Loki grinned. Thor covered his face and leaned against the door. Loki's eyes gleamed. He reached out to nudge the door with a small spell, intending to make Thor stumble out and display his shame to the crowd. Seeing his brother humbled delighted him. Before Loki could finish the charm, cheers and shouts outside the lounge cut off mid-sentence and turned to audible gasps. The world fell silent as if someone had held a finger to its lips. The few inside the lounge froze. "What's happened? Did Sif win already?" Thor whispered, dread crawling up his spine. They peered through the crack together. In the arena, a thin veil-like crimson energy had wrapped around Sif, lifting her off the ground. She roared, all her muscles straining, trying to break free, but she was utterly motionless. Her opponent, the female sorcerer from Midgard, floated nearby with casual ease, watching Sif as if she'd subdued a feather. Sif, famed across the 9 realms, could not break free in front of that woman. It was no longer merely surprising. It felt like madness. Sif, she lost? Thor's eyes widened. Loki's prank lost its appeal. He frowned, thinking about how little he'd respected Midgarders. Tony's earlier victory he had explained away as Thor's own mistake. Now it looked like Kamartaj's sorcerers were genuinely formidable. A calm, distant voice announced the result. "Second match. Kamartaj wins. The third battle will begin in half an hour. Asgard will send the first contestant." Thor and Loki exchanged looks. "If we lose the third, it's a complete defeat. Who will we send?" Thor said. The Warriors 3, who had earlier boasted that they could easily deal with those from the barren lands, fell silent. None of them dared step forward. A third loss would mean public disgrace, nailed to Asgard's pillar of shame. After a long, uneasy exchange, their eyes shifted, finally settling on Loki. Loki blinked, taken aback. "Me?" On the main platform, Leon and Odin stood side by side, watching the arena. "I didn't expect Kamartaj to have produced so many excellent sorcerers," Odin said, looking from the ashen-faced Sif in the arena to Wanda, who was returning to the lounge with a composed smile. Leon shook his head. "Earth simply has many talented people. The Ancient One let nature take its course. She did not go seeking them out." "You have done well, Lord Leon. The Ancient One had a harder time as Sorcerer Supreme, I've heard." Leon gave a small, rueful smile. "Perhaps, though there are other reasons. I understand you repelled Dormammu some time ago." "Who spoke of that?" Leon asked, surprised. "In the fringe dimensions in Hell, the tale spread. Even Mephisto is said to have sent reparations to Kamartaj." Leon waved this off. He sent a trivial trinket of magic. "I'm more interested in the Casket of Ancient Winters and the Eternal Flame." A few months back, several hellish lords had sent offerings after skirmishes in Earth's dimension. Useless things, just to paper over the conflict. Leon had locked them all in the New York Sanctum's vault. His preoccupation with artifacts made Odin fall silent. Then Loki, now wearing a horned crown and flowing robes, walked up to the main platform. "You're sending Loki for the third match?" Leon said with more interest than surprise. Odin looked at Leon, a question in his face, and transmitted a thought to the lounge. From the Kamartaj side, their challenger responded. A middle-aged man in spectacles, carrying a leather briefcase, stepped out of their lounge and into the arena. Leon's smile widened. "You should prepare your artifacts. Your Majesty Odin," he said pleasantly.